Hey everyone, we're going to do things a little bit differently today. Hair is one of those topics that can easily get overcomplicated when it really just it doesn't have to be. So instead today what I'm going to do is show you, kind of walk you through my process of how I figure out and how I would paint hair, and we're just going to use this as an example. So when I look at a picture like this, the first thing I go through is I have to find my highlights, my midtones, and shadows. Now, instead of trying to think of hair as individual strands, I like to block it out first and work really broad and then work to more refined afterwards. So when I see this picture, the first thing I'm noticing is that I have some highlights here and here, and then all throughout here. But one thing to keep in mind is that because she is three-dimensional and she's going to have a circular shape to the head. So when I'm looking at the highlights, it almost has like this halo effect where the highlights are going to be wrapping around in a similar way that this is wrapping around. So you can see, oh, let me show you what I mean by that again. Like you can see that if I were to draw highlights, it would follow this line right here all the way around just because of the curvature and the roundness of her head. The highlights are quite literally wrapping around. We have a few here. We also have these highlights here. And then the next thing I would think about are my shadows. So let me get rid of all of these real fast. We have a little bit of a shadow right here, and that's just because of the way the hair is falling over. But something, I don't know if you're noticing this, but her highlights are a little bit cooler on this side and they're a little bit warmer here. And then here, they're a little bit cooler on this side and they're a little bit warmer here, except for right here. So I'm really also thinking about the warmth, the color temperature, if it's warm or if it's cool. Although I'd really be interested in swatching this out. But anyhow, the way the hair falls over, there's going to be some parts of the hair because it's shiny that is going to catch the light better than other areas that are curved under, kind of like right here. And so if I were thinking about this area, my shadows really kind of come out like a fan here. And in the next lesson, I'm actually giving you an artist exercise to help you practice this concept. And we have shadows in this area. I think one of the things that we do to overcomplicate things is we really begin to think about the whole strand as opposed to blocking in shapes first. So if I'm looking at the shape of this shadow, it would kind of be like this. Like I could just start off by painting that whole thing in, like quite literally blocking in the shape of my shadows first, and then going to my midtones, and then going to my highlights afterward. Like I personally like to work from shadow to highlight when it comes to first like blocking in my underpainting. It just makes things so much easier for me later on since we're working very opaque in the beginning. But yeah, I would just kind of go around and block in with a big, just big brush strokes, trying to find where all the shadows are first. And then later on, I would figure out, okay, here are my highlights. And then you have the transitional in betweens, which are your midtones. Once I go from here, and hold on, before I go any further, let me show you what that would kind of look like. Now, I love using photo programs like Photoshop, or I use Canva in this course extensively because that is a free online program that you can utilize without having to pay for something like this, Photoshop. But one thing I love about it is I can really break down an image like this. So this is such a great tool for me as an artist to see, like, if I were blocking this in, it kind of gives me my guide of where I would be like doing my underpainting and my shadows, my midtones, and my highlights here. And it kind of gives you a really great idea of the shape of it. Now, after I would make this, like I really like to, as I said before, I like to work very broad and then go more defined. What would more defined look like? The next step would be something that would look more like this. We're starting to get in these lines that help transition in between. This could still even be your underpainting. Like if you're working monochromatic, you could still just, take your highlights and add a few lines in here to make it transitional, midtones and shadow. Same way, you're just kind of adding more of those details in. All right, and the last step would be this one, which is just taking it a step further. So this would be like totally refined before you do detailed color glazing. This would still be monochromatic, working with your value scale from darks to lights. And then final would be my detail glazing, where I kind of add in those final touches, those final details, but really add in a lot of the glazing so I don't ruin any of the work that I've done before. And that would look like this. When you're starting to add in colors, add in maybe a script liner brush to get pull some of those hairs all the way through. And when you do that, it kind of ties the whole piece together. Now you're probably thinking, oh, great. You made it look so easy, even though it's on the computer. So why don't we dive in a little bit further and talk about a couple of things. The first being your highlights, midtones, and your shadows working in a monochromatic value scale. Now, I know that I told you that this looks a little bit cooler than this side. It's very easy to see the warmth here. It looks more red, like it's leaning towards the red side of your color wheel. But why don't we swatch it out on the computer real fast and see what we're actually getting here? And hopefully this will be as surprising to you as it was to me. But first, let's do this. Okay, so I'm swatching one of these warmer, I would say like a mid-tone color. It's not completely in shadow. And it might not be surprising to you, but it's more in this probably like a cadmium red light, or like a mixture between cad red light and a cadmium orange. That would be like the saturated version, but it's still pretty desaturated. It's way down here, the value. It's very, it's low in, dark in value, and it's very desaturated. But what about this one? So this one kind of surprised me. It's still actually a desaturated version of this. It looks like a cadmium orange. So to me, when I first saw this, my eye was playing tricks on me and thinking that this was going to be more on the cooler side. Now, is that a problem when you're painting? No, because this kind of brings me back to what we were talking about with your bias blinders. When you are developing your own style, you kind of start creating these bias blinders where your brain makes the interpretation that this is cool. Even though now that when I see it like this, where you're kind of breaking it down to its very elementary, like basic blocking, and it's easy to see that this is a warm color. But when it looks like this, my eyes were playing tricks on me, and this looked very cool. To me, it looked like it had some kind of blue undertone. So if I didn't break this down on a computer, what would have happened is I would have done my blocking in, but instead of doing my highlights, midtones, and shadows in like all, or my glazing with all like warm colors, I probably would have laid in some cooler tones. And there's a couple things that can be said about this. Number one is it wouldn't be accurate to the photo, but does it need to be? And this is where your style really starts to come into play. The way you interpret an image or the way you see the world, whether it be cool or warm, the way you're visually interpreting the world actually helps develop your personal style. And that's why it's really important to not get so hung up on accuracy, because there are some things that might be fun to be accurate with. But then there's other things that really push the style and really make you stand out from everyone else. Like you could go through this entire image and swatch everything out to be exactly identical to the image that you see on the screen. But then why wouldn't you just print out a photo and give it to your client? Like the whole point of having you do this is you're going to have a very unique perspective of how you interpret each image. So this is just one of those examples. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the how of painting this, because I think, to be honest with you, this is really a good explanation of how I would paint it. I would start very chunky, and then I would refine even more until I got to my detailed color glazing, where I add in the final details. But in the next lesson, I'm going to give you an artist exercise so you can practice on your own and start developing the skills that make you a unique artist. Okay, I will see you there.